All right, Carrie.
Okay, I was just giving a few more people a second to get in before we started. All right, welcome everybody to this Geospatial Professional Network webinar. This is part of our Location, Enterprise, Addressing, and Public Safety series. We are talking about GIS at the core of 911. Today we're going to be covering federal legislation, indoor mapping, and Z-axis. I am Carrie Brennan, and my co-webinar presenter is Catherine Cargo. Catherine, do you want to introduce yourself or say hello?
Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine Cargo, GIS manager at the Orleans Parish Communication District in New Orleans.
So we are going to be, I'm just going to flip ahead here. I'm going to go ahead and do the agenda. We're going to keep this kind of really casual today. One of the things that you will notice on your Zoom toolbar is a Q&A option. It might be under your More button. We're going to ask that if you have any questions throughout the webinar, if you can go ahead and type them into the question and answer dialogue. The reason that we're going to ask you to do that as opposed to the chat dialog box is that we can track the Q&A a little bit better than we can keeping track of it in the chat dialog box. And if we do not get to all of the questions, then we will be able to respond back to you after the session. I see that Stephen has a question, or he's got his hand raised, or a few people do. Can you, if you, oh, okay, everybody's put their hand down. All right. Okay, so we've done introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about why we are here. We're going to go through some FCC updates on location-based routing. We're going to talk about indoor mapping and some of the state's laws that exist here in the United States. Not so much what's happening in Canada, because I do see that we do have some of our Canadian friends on the line as well. And then we're going to talk about some standards and requirements initiatives that are underway as well. And we will have an open question and answer at the end as well. So with that, I am going to make sure I'm on the right slide. First of all, I am going to state before I dive into this slide that this webinar is being recorded and will be accessible on the GPN. Danielle, will it be available on the LMS or on GPN Connect? I'm not certain of which platform it will be on.
We will post it to the Learning Annex as well as to YouTube.
All right, perfect. So the learning platform and then as well as to YouTube. So you will be able to access this after the fact. I'll go through this slide and then I'm going to let Catherine take over if you don't mind. So the purpose of today's webinar is to gain an overview of some of the report and orders that have come out in the last 12 to 24 months. We're going to be specifically talking about the FCC report and order of 24-4 and then as well 24-78. What that means to your GIS data, to Z-axis data and dispatchable location. We are also going to explore the role of GIS and indoor mapping in meeting federal requirements and improving situational awareness. So talking about that, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the laws that are coming about in states like Alyssa's law, which is connected to school safety initiatives, and relating that to actionable GIS. And then if we have time, because Catherine and I really are passionate and love to talk about this stuff, if we have time, we will see some examples about how this information is being leveraged to integrate into Next Gen 911, some indoor mapping examples in emergency response systems as well. So with that, I'm going to pass things over to Catherine and let her talk a little bit about some of the FCC updates.
Hey, everybody. I'm really glad you guys could join us this afternoon. You know, a big part about what we do, in addition to all the GIS stuff we do, is keeping up with the laws and the rules and what the government is saying we need to be doing in order to get the job done. The job that we're talking about here is implementing Next Gen 911, and I know you guys have all been, you probably have been very aware that we've been implementing Next Gen 911 for a while. So, but the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, uh, within the last year released a couple of different report and orders. And we're going to discuss two of them here in depth because they do relate directly to 911, the routing of calls to the correct PSAP, and the exchange of data in a next-gen 911 environment. So we're going to start with FCC 24-4, titled Location-Based Routing for Wireless 911 Calls. And this is routing to the correct PSAP. So just so you understand, we're not routing to where the people need help. We're routing to the PSAP. There was a problem that if you're familiar with 911, E911, you know that phase 1 and phase 2 was like back in the 90s. And but it was really before a lot of handheld stuff was in your phone, location devices and things. Basically, you routed off of a tower, or you located the caller based on their tower location. If you couldn't get an exact location. We've come a long way since then. Now we're going beyond or behind the location of where the caller is to well, we've gone to where the caller is as opposed to where the tower is. This example is a good example of why this was needed to happen. Orleans Parish is in the pink, and this parish up here, if you can see my, I don't know if you can see my the parish to the north is St. Bernard Parish. Parish to the south is Plaquemines and Jefferson parishes. So that tower being right on the edge of the river is covering about 3 different parishes. And so if that call hits that tower, but it's coming from across the river to the north in St. Bernard Parish, we're going to have to stop what we're doing here and transfer it over to St. Bernard. It's a one-button transfer. We do it all the time, but it's an unnecessary step. So the FCC created some rules that said, okay, we're gonna bypass this problem, and the carriers are going to have to get a little bit better on doing location-based routing so that the call goes to the correct PSAP before it's ever answered. Next slide, please. So just kind of in a nutshell, first I want to say, if you've never read an FCC report and order, they're pretty interesting. They can be dry, but they lay it out so well. I take a look at a short one if you have a chance. Not only does it give you context, but they give you all of the comments that people made, um, and that because this goes through a whole process before they ever release the report and order. So um, there's all kinds of footnotes. It's really quite a good read. The lawyers write very well, and they lay it all out. So
And
my
Catherine,
yes,
sorry, if I can add to that, as concerned members of the public and of the GIS and public safety community, you have the opportunity to comment on any of these report and orders when they are looking for comment. So if a if there is a request for comment, you can read through these and submit your comments
right.
as you require, in the same way that um, the GPN might request comment or Nina would request comment on a standard, things like that. And honestly, I would highly recommend doing that for the simple reason that it's a great opportunity to ensure that your voice is heard, because every one of those comments does need to be looked at and reviewed.
Mhm.
Um, it's always good to make sure that you can back up what you are saying, of course, with the appropriate um,
Details.
details. Absolutely. I'm glad you know what I'm thinking. Um, but yeah, it's always good to be able to make comment like that.
Right, right. It's one of those ways you have a voice. So, and we're all in this together. So, and it's very cool. They do discuss the comments and why they accepted it or why they didn't accept it. So, anyway, um, so just a few notes about what they talk about here. It's important to note that if you haven't quite made it over to next gen 911 ready equipment in your call center, that if you're still using uh, the selective router, um, you are exempt from this. Your PSAP is exempt from this. Your carriers are exempt from this because they first off, it's harder to do this digital data push that they do with your when your call comes in, uh, with technical limitations of analogs, and it's also being phased out. So just be aware that if you're still not quite NG 911 ready within your PSAP, this doesn't really apply to you. Um, but I hope you're getting ready. Um, and then these are just the accuracy standards that they delineate, um, which it's important to note if the accuracy or even the timeliness, if it takes too long to return locations, if it doesn't meet the threshold, then they have to use the fallback of cell tower locations or the best available information. So, next slide, please. Um, I wanted to give you an idea of the implementation deadlines that the FCC is uh, putting to the carriers to get this done. Um, it it this R&O came out in I think of June in 2024, so they should be getting pretty close to I think the larger the nationwide carriers have all made this jump. Um, but there may be some smaller non-nationwide carriers, and there may be also text carriers that haven't made the jump. But for the most part, the big guys, the big carriers are on board. And I would suggest if you have a contact within your your LEC, um, to check with them and maybe contacts with your wireless carriers and see where they are. See if they're able to do location-based routing. And this was just another example of again the river being in the way. A cell tower on the edge of 3 parishes, and so it could potentially be routed to any of 3 parishes. So um, we're glad that location-based routing is coming along. Next slide, please.
So I'll speak to this one if you like.
Yes,
So what
please.
we're really talking about is this data transition planning for Next Gen 911. And we're really in the middle of this transition. And this transition has been going on for a very long time. I would say this, the very first conference that I went to that we spoke about Next Gen 911 was in 2002. And I remember the conversation of it was the first big thing. It was the hot thing that was coming up, and it was going to be fully implemented in 5 years. That was 23 years ago. So let me just check my calendar on my watch here. Yep, that's right on schedule. But really what we're talking about is the complete change in infrastructure from the ground up. We're getting rid of those plain old copper lines. We're getting rid of our selective routers and everything, and we're going to an IP-based solution. If you are in a state or region, municipality that has implemented an emergency services IP network or an EZNet, chances are you are in this priority 1 phase, at least, or you have been for a while, where you are using your PSAP boundaries, your GIS data for your PSAP boundaries, and your MSAG to do your initial call routing. So that's kind of your first phase of this implementation. So you use your PSAP boundaries to do that geodetic lookup. Going back to those slides that Catherine had put on, where is the call initiating from? What PSAP did the call initiate from? And then the MSAG is still looking up and doing that civic location. Priority 2, or the next phase of this, is really where we start to now use our road center lines and our responder boundaries, or our services boundaries. Those replace our MSAG, that tabular data, to do that civic lookup. And what we have done over the past, I'll say maybe 10 or 15 years, is we've really got into that priority 1 phase in many places, and we've been working on getting our GIS data ready for priority 2 and then priority 3, which I'll show you in just a second. But either the originating service providers, the OSPs, or the PSAPs, or whoever is putting your EZNet in place, haven't all kind of meshed together and got everything in place fully and completely. These FCC report and orders are something to help kickstart this whole process and really give people that push to get us to that end, to that priority 3, where we're now using our PSAP polygons to do our geodetic lookup. We're using our road center lines, our services polygons or our responder polygons, and then our address points to improve our road center lines for our civic lookups. So we're doing end-to-end caller management, essentially, using GIS instead of that tabular data. And that's really what the whole point of this is.
Yeah, it's you're right, it has been a long time coming, but for a long time we've been telling GIS folks in call centers and around, get your data ready, get it synced. This is why we've been telling you that. This is how the calls will be routed to you. This is how calls for service will be answered and located, basically.
Yeah.
So, um, that's a good segue to the next order, report and order 2478, which was much broader and really incorporated a lot of the things that the location-based routing order talked about. But basically, they're trying to get down to the nitty-gritty at the FCC and say, okay, here are the rules. We want to get this done. We want to accelerate the transition from legacy E911 with your selective router and your MSAG to next generation 911, which is an IP-based, interoperable, and secure emergency communication system. Basically, it's all digital and it's all across SIP lines. So that's kind of the backbone to it. And we're trying to get the details worked out so that everything can travel along that backbone. Right now, everything's not digital. So the goals of the report, and they state it over and over again, is they want to accelerate retirement of legacy 911 systems because they've heard about how expensive it is to maintain both a legacy system and a next gen solution. And the reason they're having to do that is because either the providers haven't quite got their network worked out yet, or the call center hasn't quite got their equipment all up again. It's been on both sides of the EZNet cloud where there have been, delays. But apparently in the comments, which is kind of juicy, there were all kinds of examples of finger pointing and saying, well, we can't do this because you're slowing us down. And so FCC being the parent said, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to follow these rules that we're putting forth in this FCC 2478 R&O and towards and add to and to be working towards network reliability, resiliency, and routing efficiency, very important. We're going to improve location accuracy with the triangle, the pyramid that Carrie showed a minute ago. You can see how we're working up to that, getting all the way up to address points. Dynamic was a big word. I think that means that it's real time, or it can change easily, and that's because it's digital. It's not analog, and it doesn't have to be. You can send it to other digital PSAPs that can receive that data. So dynamic rerouting, and then public safety response times should be lowered. And it also had these rules also have the effect of promoting digital equity and accessibility, especially for the hard of hearing community. Um, it replaces the TTY machines. A lot of people have been using text, but it's going to go even further than that. So it's a long read. It's a great read. The background by itself is just a good read, but it's the FCC saying, okay, this is it. We need to get moving on this. They don't they're tired of hearing all the complaints. So next slide, please.
So in the chat dialog box, I did put a link to the FCC website where you can
Oh yeah.
find the link to all of these report and orders. There is also the link to filing comments to any of the proceedings as well. And I was going to mention this a little bit later on, but once a month, the FCC does have a
Open
an open
meeting.
public forum.
Hmm.
Uh, the last one was last Tuesday, which actually did happen, even though there is the government slowdown at the moment. But it is a live public meeting that you can listen to, and it is usually broadcast on YouTube. There is a link on that FCC website. I do actually log into it every month. It's either on a Tuesday or a Thursday, depending on the calendar. And the FCC does publish their agenda usually about a week to 10 days in advance. So you can check out and see if there are items on the agenda that are of interest to you. I have learned more about the sticky things that go on
Yes.
posts than I ever thought I was going to ever need to know in my life. But you know what? It's fascinating stuff. So it's always good to know and understand that. So
We're such nerds. It's terrible. But anyway, um, uh, the big thing with RNO FCC, um, 2478 is that it creates a two-phase standard-based framework requiring all 911 originating providers, the carriers, to coordinate with state and local authorities to deliver 911 calls over IP networks with embedded location information. Very important. Um, Before it had, like Carrie said earlier, the next gen 911 rollout was like, yeah, let's all get to it. We'll be done by 2020, or no, we're still working on it. FCC says enough. The framework defines clear readiness criteria, cost responsibilities, which I was interested in, and compliance deadlines. So they're getting serious on this. So next slide, please. Okay, so you're probably familiar, if you may have be looking at this in the rear view mirror, this structure, or you may still be using some of this if you're in a legacy system at all. Um, it's basically your legacy 911 architecture, with the MSAG and the alley spills and the selective router that you pay for every month. That's part of the high cost of having two systems. Next slide, please.
okay, just
Oh,
before that, one quick thing, because we're going to talk about it a little bit later on. Um, GIS in this particular slide happens here
in the PSAP.
at the PSAP.
Right,
That'll
right.
become important.
Okay. So if we're looking at the two-phase implementation approach, phase one is initiated. This is important. It's initiated by valid requests. Valid requests mean that you are next gen ready. Your equipment is next gen compliant, whatever that means, but it basically means you can ingest digital data. And as a 911 authority, you are the one who reaches out and says, okay, I want to get started on implementing this framework. We want to enter phase one. At that point, the carriers must start delivering 911 traffic in basic SIP format to the designated, that's the other thing you have to do. You have to initiate, the 911 authorities have to initiate a valid request, and they have to define their demarcation points. Because just like before, the call centers are only responsible for what's on the other side of the demarc point. The carriers are responsible with getting it to that demarc point. So that's important because that was apparently the source of much cost discussions. So the 911, so it's just basic SIP. It's not anything big deal. It would help if you had your EZNet so that they can do some testing, but you have to be ready to receive whatever whatever the carriers are sending to you. The carriers must conduct connectivity testing. So once they say, okay, our stuff's ready, let's see if you can receive this, they have to set that up and let you know that they're testing and what the results of the test are and see where everybody is. If you're not ready, then the clock, I think, stops and you can go back to, you say, okay, I'm going to withdraw my valid request. And the reason we're trying to do this step first is because it will enable you to get your EZNet set up and get that going, and it'll hopefully get rid of those legacy network maintenance costs. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a simplified version. You got your EZNet in the middle. You've got some walls right now. Calls are created, and they go through a different paths, right? If you're still on the legacy system, well, you're not supposed to be on the legacy system if you're requesting this. But basically, you see the blue lines are digital data. Everything's going to be digital, and it's going to be coming to that point of demarcation. It doesn't have to have location information in it. We'll see that in a minute. It'll be here in the EZNet. But to get out to the PSAP, you have to be able to take that digital information. That's what the blue line is showing, right? So you may still have legacy gateways on your side. Hopefully you're in the process of getting rid of those. It's kind of a hybrid system at this point, but you're really trying to get everything digital. And that's phase one. And then you do the testing with your carrier and hopefully everything's great. So next slide, please. Going on to phase two. They must deliver 911, the carriers must deliver 911 traffic in a SIP format compliant with Next Gen 911 commonly accepted standards, including embedded location. That's the new thing. It has to have that location information in it or the PITAFLOW or equivalent.
So just,
Oh, go ahead.
Catherine, I'm going to interrupt you, sorry.
Yep.
Just to make sure that everybody on the call understands, SIP stands for a session initiated protocol, and it's basically just the language in which the 911 call coming from your cell phone, your IP-based phone, or wherever is being sent through the 911 system. And then PITAFLOW might be also a term that you are not familiar with, but it stands for Presence Information Data Format Location Object. So in Enhanced 911, we talk about ALI, automatic location information, and that is the location information that gets sent along with the 911 call that has your address embedded in it. PITAFLOW is the information, the location information that now gets sent in the data packet. So just in case anybody was not familiar with that.
Thank you. Okay. The carriers must operate or use a location information server or the list server, and they must support location validation functions, the LVF. And well, the list is an actual server that has location information in it, but the location validation function resides within the EZNet of your EZNet provider, and it is the one that validates the location of where that call is coming from, and then they send it to the correct. This is where your location-based routing comes from. They send it to the correct PSAP. The 911 authority must certify that they are ready. We're ready. We've got next generation core services, which are a lot of these functions and more. We'll see it on a slide in a second. And that they're ready to work with the LVF LIS interface. So there are responsibilities that the authorities have to do, but it's pretty much contained within in their in their system between them and their EZNet provider, and so it doesn't really concern all the carriers, everybody else who's going to be trying to send them calls. Um, Also, we want it enables policy-based routing and dynamic rerouting to help improve reliability and reduce outages. And that's been a big selling point for NextGen for a long time, is how easy it's going to be to move your PSAP if you have a disaster, you know, to just moving things around within your region or within your state, depending on how your EZNet is configured. So it's a big selling point. Next slide, please. Okay, here's phase two. Here you can see all the next generation core service functionality that the EZNet is capable of holding and uses to send the call to the right PSAP, to validate the addresses, to send the what we know is the anti-alley spill. Again, you have your ways to call 911. Um, if you still have um, things that require you to have analog data, they're called legacy elements, and they will be communicating with the lists that's on the carrier side. At each point, you can see there's a list. Um, the point of demarcation is hit. Well, it's actually the point, I think they call it the point of interconnectedness, but and it goes along the EZNet, has the functions performed on it, and hits the point, the demarc point, um, for a call center, and notice the blue lines that show all data is digital being delivered, unless you need to go through a gateway within the PSAP, which you shouldn't, but maybe some secondary PSAPs require gateways still. But you've gotten rid of your selective router, which is a big strain on a lot of budgets. And your GIS now is not so much within the PSAP, but within the EZNet. And when you do your edits of your map data, you're loading it onto a server in the EZNet. Okay, so big changes. Next slide. We have deadlines and costs. These deadlines are a little faster because they figure once you're through phase one, um, you know, you're pretty much ready. Um, you've got 6 months. You can request from your carrier to be uh, to have your um, having a brain fart. You can request from your from your carrier to that you want to go to next gen, and you're SIP ready and your NG 911 ready, they can have up to 6 months to test it. And if they found any problems that aren't valid, then you have to start over. But you have to start over with your process. This doesn't carry on. Phase two, also, they have 6 months to add all of that functionality um, and use of all that functionality within the EasyNet. The VoIP is also considered just like the carriers. And one thing they stress throughout the order is that authorities may mutually agree on alternative timelines. They really just want to get it done. Any way you can do it. They try to be flexible, and it's a good thing. So, like I said before, the default rule is that OSPs bear the cost of everything up to that point of demarcation, and then the call center handles everything after. And there are other options for changing. They can't charge you for required NG 911 compliance. Very important. Next slide, please.
So now we're gonna kind of change topics a little bit right now, and we're gonna start talking about some of the other logistics and legalities that are going on within the United States. Not so much in Canada, as I mentioned, however, that are occurring. So there is a set of laws that have been put in place in 11 states so far, called Alyssa's Law, or a version of Alyssa's Law. This law is named after Alyssa Al-Hadif, who was a victim of the Parkland, Florida high school shooting. And basically what this is a law that requires schools to have silent alarm systems that can be activated discreetly in an emergency. So basically it's having panic buttons in schools, whether they are panic buttons that are on a cell phone, if it is an under the desk type of a button, or it is a key fobbed type button that could be worn by a teacher. Really, that is what we are talking about. Something to help students and faculty be safer in an emergency. There has also been a federal effort to have federal funding tied to school compliance with this law, although that hasn't really gone very far. And the question is, what does this have to do with GIS? Well, having an alert system in your school without knowing where that alert system is coming from, or where that alert is coming from, is really a challenge. Now, I'm showing you an indoor map right now, and this happens to be an indoor map that is being displayed on software from the company that I happen to work for, but I am going to caveat this and say this is just one representation of an indoor map application. There are a lot of vendors out there that are doing indoor mapping, so to be vendor neutral, I just have access to this data easily. If you are looking for FA 102 school or a classroom, how can you easily find it on this map? if you are looking at it in an emergency situation. Obviously, you could search for it, but what is the nearest external entrance to the building? And is it an exit only, or is it an ingress egress building, or excuse me, entrance? There are a lot of questions that need to be answered. This is why it is very important in an indoor or in a mapping application that we look at building out indoor mapping data that can be utilized in multiple different applications. And what I mean by that is you want to be able to build out your GIS data that is accessible and usable for a mapping application like this that could be used in a 911 mapping application that could be utilized for facilities management, for space management, occupant experience. Build the data once, use it multiple different times. So I'm going to flip over to the next slide, and I'm going to say demo if time allows. We have about 10 minutes left, and this is where we should be going into Q&A. So I'm not going to bother doing the live demos. I'll stick around after the webinar is done. So if anybody wants to see a live demo, I'll be happy to stick around and do that. But I do want to make sure that we cover all of the content before we open things up to Q&A. So, whoops, I'll go on to this last slide. So I do want to talk about, we talked about the indoor maps, and I do want to talk to you about the fact that, there are things like Alyssa's law. There are laws like the Ray Bombs Act, as well as Carey's law, which are laws that you can look up. Ray Bombs Act is one that basically states that if you have a multi-line telephone system, if you call 911, it's important for you to know where that call is coming from. Carey's law, if you want a very heartbreaking story, read that story. But the story of Carey Hunt, her dad, Hank Hunt, fought very hard to get that law passed. Basically, it means that if you are in a hotel, you need to be able to dial 911, not 911. But really, all of those have important location-based information behind them. And we are moving into an environment where there are a lot of states, not just the 11 states that have passed a version of Alyssa's law, but a number of states that have passed laws for critical incident mapping for school safety. And there's been funding behind it. A lot of those have specific rules on them about the way that the mapping data needs to be produced. Our recommendation is always that you are producing GIS data that can be easily accessible, easily updated, and create any outputs from that you need. And again, this is going to be somewhat of a major investment, like any GIS data is. So you want to be able to use it for multiple different purposes, with GIS being at the top of that. Having said that, there are a lot of different ways that you can build indoor GIS data. And There is no one standardized way in which people have been building GIS data for public safety today. So I want to talk to you about some of the indoor mapping standards and some of the initiatives that are going on in the industry right now. So there are existing indoor data models and indoor standards. Open Geospatial Consortium, or OGC, has the indoor GML. IMDF, or the Indoor Mapping Data Format, which is essentially Apple's data format, is available, as well as the IFC, which is a standard for BIM modeling. Those are three that I would say are very much, well, the BIM one is definitely for BIM, or computer-aided drafting design standards, but the other two are what I would consider more conveyance type models. They're very good for display purposes. As well, we have things like software data models, like Esri's ArcGIS indoor data model or information model. But as I mentioned before, there's no model specifically for data creation, maintenance, or data management with public safety as its primary focus for NextGen 911. Nina has created a working group called the Indoor Data Model REQ Working Group, or Indoor Data Model Requirements Working Group, that is currently in the works to build out the requirements for this data model. The data will be used for NextGen 911 call flow when the i3 architecture does accept indoor data for NextGen call flow, not just the site structure address points. And then also for 2D and then eventually 3D data display within the PSAP, and then among other uses. We haven't really talked a whole lot about Z-axis information yet, but this data model will include all of the Z-axis data to help you with your Z-axis information, because when Catherine was talking about all of that move over to NextGen 911, all of the cell phone data that is being delivered today should be delivering a Z-axis location information along with your X and Y location. However, that information is being delivered as height above ellipsoid. And the challenge with that is a number that most people do not understand, and it needs to be translated into height above ground, or even better, an estimated floor. There are some applications already on the market or already in place that can be utilized, but not that many PSAPs have actually turned on and are displaying that height above ellipsoid in order to utilize these third-party applications to look at what an estimated floor might be.
Right. We have it turned on. We get it in our spill, but it doesn't mean anything to us. It is height above ellipsoid. I'm working with our CPE to see if they couldn't maybe translate it for us to height above terrain. Height above floor, you guys probably, if you've thought about this at all, you know that the standard is within plus or minus 3 meters, and sometimes that can be a floor, right? 3 meters is what, 12, 13, 14 feet, something like that. I mean, that could be the difference between, you know, one floor and the next. So I think that still needs some work, getting that ironed out, but it's coming. They are delivering that data. and it is getting delivered with your with your Annie's bill. If you may not see it, but it's there.
Yep. So, um, but anyways, with that, I am going to say, we're kind of ending this abruptly, but I also want to make sure that we are opening things up to questions. I know there were a couple of questions in the Q&A and one or two in the chat dialog box that I think I managed to answer. Does anybody have any other questions at this time? Feel free to throw them in the Q&A at the moment. You've got Catherine's information, my information.
I think there's a little more information past
Yep, I was just
past
going to
this.
leave this up
Okay.
for a second.
Okay.
And then as we are continuing to just kind of wrap things up, we do have some upcoming events coming up, including some webinars that are coming up in the next few weeks. We do have a MAPI Q&A as well on November 17th. And then some programs that are coming up. The Advanced GLA is actually taking place in New Orleans this week, but we do have a Leadership Academy, an in-person one in Savannah, Georgia. And then as well, some additional events include Cal GIS in Redlands, California, our virtual LEAP conference, which is taking place March 3rd through 5th, and then the GIS Valtech conference in Mobile, Alabama, March 30th through April 2nd.
I like how everybody's coming south. That's great. Yeah, the LEAP conference. I just want to give a shout out to that. It's a location, enterprise addressing, and public safety meeting, and it's a lot of addressing talk. If, like Wendy said in the chat, if you enjoyed this content, if it's something you want to know more about, please consider attending the LEAP conference. It's virtual. You can have group, groups. You can get all your team together and watch it. It's 3 days. I think we start, it's not full days. I think we start at 1 and go to like 5 or something so that people can do some work and then attend the conference. But it's great. You can look for past presentations on the Connect. I'm sorry, not on Connect,
On the website.
on the website. Yeah, the
Yep,
TPN.
the conference program will be coming soon. We just
Yep.
closed the call for presentations about a week or so ago, so we are just going through the abstracts now.
So, and I just wanted to wrap up, while folks, if anybody's got any questions, I wanted to just say that, so I know we've been talking about next gen 911 for a long time in the 911 world, not so long in GIS, but I've been really trying to hook the two forever together because they are hooked together. It's incredibly important to have good GIS data. It's going to be routing calls. It's going to be routing the way people receive information. It's going to be all the wonderful things they say it's going to be. But I think we're getting close. A lot of people are getting close to being ready. They may have their equipment, but maybe the carriers aren't ready, or there's. But I think with these orders, these FCC orders that we've seen, FCC wants to see it move along. Carriers from the comments want to see it move along, and the call centers want to see it move along because it's time. We've been hearing a lot about it for a long time. So anyway, we got 1 minute to go. I'm gonna let y'all. Carrie, if you are interested, if you're interested, Carrie was going to give a live demo. Um, Danielle, we can go over, right?
Yeah,
I think,
I mean,
yeah,
if you are comfortable staying and people want to stay for the live demo, we can go over a little bit to do it.
I see a couple of thumbs up. So why don't we do that? And if you can stay, we appreciate it. If you can't, it will probably, we're still recording this. It will be part of the recording and saved. So, Carrie, I'll let you take it away. How about that?
Yep. So, actually, I'm gonna jump over to this one instead. So this is just a mapping application that you would normally see in a PSAP. Um, and we've got a 911 call that is coming in to this particular location. The call is right here. We've got information about the location here. The approximate uncertainty of the call. So it's about plus or minus 12 meters right here. The raw X and Y location of it. And it's not on the first floor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually hit, because we were talking about Z-axis. I do have the indoor map available in this particular location. And as you can see here, we've got a floor filter or a floor picker, so I can, flip through all of the different floors of the building and see what is available. It's very important when you are building an indoor map that you want to have it to be very standardized and highly accessible. So I'm going to flip back to the first floor just because it's got a little bit more color to it. Not everybody does this, but the way that we build our maps is every room is uniquely color coded. So anything that is yellow is going to be a room where people gather. So this happens to be a hotel. So this is like the lobby and registration. Anything that has is in this tan color is going to be an office. Anything in blue here is going to be a restroom or like a shower room. Anything that is in red is going to be like the kitchen or a laundry room or an electrical room. So there's going to be some type of hazard in there. It's just a quick visual to know that and understand that. But I understand that this call is not on the first floor, so I'm just going to see what that Z-axis information from the call is. So I'm going to open up this look up. I see there's a building detected where that call is. I've got the address of it, what the building name is. This is coming from the indoor map data. The height above ground is basically, basically 65 feet plus or minus 10 feet, so that's 3 meters. The caller is estimated to be on the 8th floor. The likely range is between the 7th and 8th floor. Again, that's that 10 feet or 3 meter accuracy of it. So I can flip over here to the 8th floor and I can see where that call is coming from. Looks like the call, and I don't have my uncertainty radius on here, which of course is about 12 meters. So there should be a big circle around here that shows, all of the potential rooms that this call is coming from. But it looks like it helps if I can actually read. Looks like the call is probably initiated from room 819. Now, having said that, this is an 11-story building. as a first responder, it's still my duty to clear the entire building. But if I can start checking on the 8th floor or the 7th floor, to find the emergency, as opposed to having to start on the 11th floor and work my way down, that's something that's going to help clear out a lot of rooms. You're still going to clear every floor naturally, but if you're able to narrow down the search, that's going to speed up time in an emergency and reduce the potential for a disastrous outcome. And that's the whole point of having more information in the hands of people that need it, whether it is in the hands of a frontline telecommunicator or a first responder, whether that's a tactical officer that is going in an emergency situation, or a fire chief that has a command center set up. Chances are somebody's not necessarily going to be pulling up this information, on their phone as they are rushing into a building, because they just don't have the time to do that in an emergency. But if they can be looking at it on their way to an event, absolutely, that's the type of thing that they want to be doing and familiarizing themselves with it. And then, going back to an application like this, which is a much more simplistic viewer that could be put in place at a school, say for a principal to look at, or school resource officer, something like that. You're able to see again where all the stairwells are, where the camera locations are. It is dynamic, so I can search in here for like D206 and it will bring it up for me, and I can zoom directly to it. So you want that dynamic GIS information available to you. Any questions or comments on what I have shown you? This was probably like the fastest little demo I have ever given, because I want to be very respectful of your time. But does anybody have any questions or comments?
I'm wondering if anybody in the audience is aware of the Z value, and if so, are they using it in their work?
Very good question.
I guess maybe type your response. Oh, Cynthia. Yep, you're like New Orleans. Like
Yeah, Cynthia is also one of our friends from
Canada.
Canada. Yes.
Hi, eh? Z
Got my
level.
flag right there.
Z level, but for roads.
Which is also a very important part of having Z access, because as much as we talk about indoor data these days, and of course, we talk about the fact that we spend 80% of our time indoors, and, at least 90% of cell phone calls come from, excuse me, at least 90% of 911 calls come from cell phones these days. We still also have to take into consideration a lot of the fact that there are a lot of events that occur above and below us outside. So I'm just thinking about where Catherine is from, and the fact that, you'll be driving along a road again, I'm thinking not far from the Superdome in New Orleans, and there are all sorts of very large bridges over top of you,
Lots of
and
overpasses.
lots of overpasses.
Hmm.
Um, and that is something that is important to be
And
aware of, because guess what? People call from below or
hmm
above, and it's
hmm
important that we have those spaces modeled.
right. And actually we just for modeling purposes, that's how we do assign a z value um to our overpasses, but having that extra spill data coming in could is another good clue for the call takers to know whether the people are above or below.
Yeah. So Bill has got a very good question in the chat. Is the orthometric height in the United States feet? NAVD 88. So
I don't think so. Isn't
I'm
it
going to
meters?
say the answer is yes and no. It completely, how's that for a very good answer, right? Or how about just maybe?
Or it
Um,
depends, right?
yes, it depends. So
Not ellipsoidal. Yeah.
yeah, it depends
Yeah.
on what your data is mapped in. Most people map their data in probably something like a state plane coordinate system with a z-axis that would be NAVD 88. Yes. However, the data that is delivered through your cell phone is usually going to be delivered as an ellipsoidal measurement. So you have to do some type of mathematical equation in order to translate it into something usable.
Right. And they
And
exist. There, I mean, if you Google
I
math,
I showed you, yeah.
if you Google it, there are equations, but you're gonna have to write a script and put it in there so that it.
And this is exactly what I showed you right here.
Hmm.
That is something that, again, just something that my company created and convert and did. It is a commercial product that is available. That is not meant to be a sales pitch. But there are other vendors out there that are
Right.
potentially doing similar things. You can do the data conversion. You can do the math yourself. There is some math in the background, and I've said this before, I will say it again. My motto in life is I don't do math on any day that ends in Y.
Um, he followed up with a question, nothing from the FCC on the requirement. Um,
So actually, we did not get a chance to talk about this. So there actually is a docket requirement or a docket um, item about this. And it has just recently gone out to public comment where the FCC requires the OSPs, the carriers, to deliver the z-axis data as height above ellipsoid.
right,
That was originally
right,
done, I believe,
a while ago.
because, yeah, quite some time ago. And I believe it was done simply because that is a standardized format. It aligns up very much in line with what GPS um, standards are delivered in. And now this docket, let me just go back and get the
I
actual
think
number.
it's the sixth request and order, not request,
The
requirement
sixth report and order
report and order.
on docket number 07-114.
Indoor location accuracy.
Yeah.
That's what it's
That
called.
particular docket, and again, it was currently open for, or has
Comment.
been open for, um,
comment?
For comment, the FCC has asked if the carriers should deliver the Z-axis data in both height above ellipsoid and height above ground.
Yes. Do you want us
So,
to use it?
well, so the question becomes, do you take the height above ellipsoid and convert it after it is delivered to the PSAP? Or should it be converted and then delivered? That's, in a
Mhm.
nutshell, that's what it is. Take both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything wrong with potentially that.
Yeah.
It's completely dependent. I think if both were being delivered, that would not necessarily be a bad thing. I think where we have concern, though, is um, if you get a height above ground of 35, is that any more useful than a height above ellipsoid?
Yeah, I think there's going to need to be more discussion, and certainly um, people are going to need to really think about, well, what is it I need to do my job better?
Yeah.
And that's what it'll come down to. And is that
And
in
and
the
the
CL?
reason, sorry, Catherine, the reason that I say, is 35 as height above ground any more helpful than um, height above ellipsoid? Because height above ground at 35, if there's a building there, but the first floor is 15 feet and the second floor is,
12,
or yeah, something like that, or, the first floor is 20 feet, or it's,
right,
maybe 35
lobby.
was not a good height. Maybe it's, 100 feet, something like that. So you really need to be able to convert that into an estimated floor,
Yeah,
right?
mezzanines.
And Bill, you are asking all of the really good questions today. Um, that is not in CLDXF, not in the currently published version, nor is it in the version that is about to be published.
Hmm.
CLDXF USA or CLDXF Canada. There are two published versions that are coming out. One that specifically relates to um, the US uniqueness, and then one that relates to the Canadian uniqueness of measures. Um, but it does not specifically relate to all of those, I would say. Um, and a lot of this will be sorted out when we talk about our indoor model as well. A lot of it is discussed in the 3D requirements document as well from Nina.
Nina, right.
Yeah. And I will say this, we are a Geospatial Professional Network webinar. We all work very closely with Nina on all of these. All of our volunteers are um, cross contaminating the that's not the right word, but we work on both sets of committees all of the time. So
We're making Nina spatial. That's what we're doing.
that's right.
Our members.
Yeah.
Um, I want to thank everybody who stuck with us this long and who attended today and for your questions and your attention. And we really appreciate you guys sticking around an extra 20 minutes. And Danielle, thank you for accommodating us. And I hope everybody has a great, great rest of their week. And please do look into the LEAP conference, March 5th, 3rd through 5th. next year. It's virtual. You can do it. Thank
Yes,
y'all.
we would love to see you there.
Right. Thank y'all very much.
Take care, everyone.
All right.